The Pork Podcast is brought to you by Zoetis. Visit pighealthmonthly.com for more information. And by United Animal Health, scientifically better animal nutrition. Learn more at unitedanh.com.
Holy shike, let's talk about pigs. Here's your host of the Pork Podcast, Jennifer Shike.
There's just something about the story behind the story. And as a storyteller, I'm always searching for ways to give readers just a little bit more. And that's what the Pork Podcast is all about, bringing you stories of the people and the progress of the pork industry. I'm Jennifer Shike. Let's go find just a little bit more.
Well, I'm so excited to welcome Melanie Langley, Director of People Care at Fine Swine, LLC, whose unique global upbringing and passion for leadership are making a profound impact on the pork industry. Today, we're going to dive into her 3Ps framework: protection, purpose, and presence, to discover how prioritizing the person behind the pig is the ultimate key to success in the barn. It's such an honor to welcome you to the podcast today, Melanie.
Oh my goodness, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's going to be a fun time we're going to have here. I just have to start off by saying I love your title. I think that's the very best title ever, to be the Director of People Care. But can you just kick us off today by explaining what that really means and tell us a little bit about your role at Fine Swine?
Absolutely. So most of the people who are in my position tend to come under an HR title of some sort. And while HR is a lot of what I do, it does have a bit of a transactional feel. It's kind of this policies and making sure payroll's done, making sure we're compliant federally, where people care to me screams what we actually do, which is making sure that our mission is fulfilled, and that's taking care of people. So while some of the things are the same, there's obviously that same purpose and an intent on making sure that we are compliant with laws, bringing in folks internationally, training leaders, being present and accessible for the teams is one of the things that is most important. And building a culture that is successful is what our ultimate value is.
Well, your background is so interesting. Your father served with the USDA in Mexico and Brazil. Your mom is from Spain. How did you grow up in the Foreign Service, and how did that prepare you for a career in international recruitment and ultimately with what you do today?
So I wouldn't have had the jobs that I have had opened up for me if it wasn't for my background. As you know, my father was with the USDA. And although in some realms, I think USDA has a bit of a negative connotation, uh, I never really experienced that side of it because it opened up the opportunity for me to come alongside farmers and to watch my father come alongside farmers internationally to build programs and to make sure that the exports and imports of the United States were flowing well, that trade folks could come over and see what the Mexican or the Brazilian farmer was doing. So while I may not have originally intended to end up in agriculture, it gave me a vision and a heart for people who are from other places. It helped me to learn how to navigate systems that weren't mine. I remember my father first telling me that we were moving to Mexico. And while my first language was Spanish, and I thought, okay, the language is going to be okay. As an 8-year-old, I was terrified that there would not be McDonald's and I would not have food that I was used to having. So as silly as that sounds, it helped me to learn how to integrate into other cultures, to listen well, to understand that I'm communicating effectively, because I think a lot of times we can translate words, but we're missing the meaning in the process. And I also know what it is to be an outsider. And I think that is the main element that helps me in what I do today. I know what it is to walk into a culture that's not your own. To be the one on the outside, not understand what's going on. Sometimes the language, you get language fatigue and trying to understand everything that is said. There's an isolation that comes with it. And so I think that uncertainty gave me empathy for when we bring folks here and just that understanding of what they're walking into.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, to be 8 and make a move like that. I mean, sometimes I think about kids who maybe move a state away or in the next county, but that's a very big leap. And but what a great opportunity, and it's so obvious that that was, you know, really helped form who you are today. And so, to be fair, you did not take a very direct path into agriculture and where you are today. When you went off to college, you had a very different dream. What was that dream, and what changed your course?
So originally, the dream was criminal justice. The dream was working in the law system, perhaps pursuing a law degree and becoming an attorney. However, that is obviously not where I ended up. As we noted earlier, my upbringing in Mexico and in Brazil has given me the ability to be able to connect with folks, whether that was in the courtroom, in the classroom. My job before this was working for Miami-Trace local school district and helping children who were trying to navigate English as a second language. And while I was in that position, I came across a Facebook post asking for somebody to help lead English classes and Spanish classes for a local farm. And while I was not expecting to make the move from education to agriculture, it was definitely something that struck me because in the town of South Solon, if you Google South Solon, I'm not even sure how many residents it has. It has a stop sign, not a stoplight. And in that little basement of a church, we had folks from Africa, we had folks from Europe, all across the Americas. And I was absolutely blown away at how I could connect with people in this small community. So while the setting has changed consistently throughout my career, the calling hasn't. I am pretty clear that the calling is to come alongside the immigrant, come alongside the foreigner, the sojourner, whatever we want to call them, and to make sure that we're advocating for them, that we're supporting their families, not just the worker, to make sure that they're seen and valued. And so, as you know, the location did surprise me. My father was ecstatic that I was in agriculture, as he loves to remind me, it's what put food on our table for years. And now I get to be a part of the process as well.
Well, it's such an interesting blend, you know, kind of what your degrees were in, you know, essentially justice and faith. How do you think that informs the way that you approach HR and leadership development today?
So justice obviously is going to make sure it's going to keep me compliant. It's going to make sure that I am accountable and that what we're doing is fair under the Civil Rights Act, under whatever our legal boundaries are. I think the faith portion is the part that, you know, character is doing, or integrity is doing what is right when no one's looking, right? So I think faith is what helps me walk the line and make sure that each person as an image bearer of God is seen and is valued and is treated right. And I think that is what gives me the guidelines to be able to do what I do.
Mhm. So, you know, during that, you know, first year that you were at Fine Swine, what were some of the things, like, you know, because you're coming into this new industry, you've not been a part of this before. What were some of the things that went through your mind? Maybe revelations you had during your first year there at Fine Swine, and how has that, you know, also spurred you along to develop what you have today?
Absolutely. So I came in with I'm not going to say a negative perspective, but maybe a negative bias would be an accurate way of putting it. I worked alongside a lot of children of the folks that I get to work and serve today. And I would hear the stories of long days, and not necessarily with the company I'm in right now, but long days and hard work, tales of mom and dad are gone before they're up and asleep when they get home kind of thing. And so I walked into the industry with a bit of a, let's see what this is really about. One of the things that I quickly learned is that there's a gentleman named Ian Harris who had a very clear vision. He's our director of production. And he had a very clear idea of what this was supposed to look like. So I don't think there was anything that I necessarily walked in and thought, I need to change. I kind of bought into the vision that he had for the company as far as making sure that our people feel heard, that people care is something that is not just a good one-liner, that it's played out. And so our people should know that they have the ability to access me, to access us, that the isolation that folks may feel when they come here is not something that is to remain. Our job is to make sure that we are instilling trust quickly and that we're removing any of those barriers. So I'm not sure there's anything that I saw in the first year that made me realize that we needed a deeper people care system. I think in the end, what it was buying into the vision that was already here and helping it grow.
Well, while in your role, you've developed this philosophy around the 3 Ps. And I love it because it's easy to remember and they seem so very, very true um, for so many different things beyond just working in a barn or being a part of a production system in agriculture. But those 3 Ps are protection, purpose, and presence. Can you break those down for us and share how they serve as pillars in what you do every day?
Absolutely. So if I'm asking somebody to leave their family behind and to come to a new country, to learn a new language, adopt a new culture, and try to figure out what we do here in the United States, I do have to offer some sort of protection. So what does that protection look like? It looks like compliance. It looks like making sure inside of our farms are safe, that we have safety protocols in place that work and that ensure that when it's time to go home, our farm team workers are walking out healthy and ready to go. It's making sure that the pay practices are fair across the board. The policies and protocols have to be clear. But most importantly, I think it's the consistency in how we treat people. Because before you can instill motivation into a team, bring culture or engagement, people have to feel safe. So they have to know that what happens in the farm is a safe place, and that we're here to take care of them and that we're here to protect them in any way that we can. Now, the second one I think that you had mentioned was purpose. And so the purpose portion came from a book that I read some time ago called Start With Why. I think almost everybody has heard. And so finding your why is essential to finding that motivation and being able to show up, because let's face it, this is not an easy job. And so having people understand the why of what they do, whether it's scraping feeders, whether it's colostrum training on day one rooms or breeding, just understanding the bigger purpose and what it contributes to the company is huge. And when people understand that, when people are bought in, performance is going to rise. People are going to take pride in what they do, and they take ownership, which is at the end of the day is what we want. We want folks to not just come in and think, I'm supporting my owner, my company, but no, this is my work on the line as well. And I think that purpose is what kind of brings that motivation. Then we have the last one. Presence is definitely the biggest one in my book, and probably the hardest, because this means showing up. This means walking in the barns. So as a people care director, as hard as it can be at times to make that time to walk in, not having a position that requires people just to come to the office, but going to them, I think is huge. It means that when those conversations have to be had, I think of a conversation I had with a manager this last week, and I could tell that there was something off with this manager, but I didn't know what it was, and there just felt like there was this disconnect. And I happened to walk in while the team was already showering out, and just across the counter had a conversation that was just absolutely mind-blowing. You never know what people are walking through. And so taking that time to be present, to not be so confined to a schedule that you're constantly thinking about the next thing on the checkoff list, and making sure that you listen without rushing and without feeling like this is a waste of time. Because at the end of the day, if we don't have our people, we're not going to have our production. And I think one of the hardest things for me personally is being interruptible, if you will. So on the disc is something we use here. And on this disc portion, I tend to be a high C. I go between a high I and a high C. So I'm very interactive, but I'm always very mindful of what the checklist is. And sometimes when there's an interruption that comes in that wasn't planned, I have a hard time taking that step back. But that's been one of the most important things I could have learned, is that people aren't interruptions, that these are sometimes appointments that, yes, they're not scheduled. Yes, we did not think we had time for it during the course of the day, but actually those are the most important meetings that you actually end up having.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as a mom, I can so relate to that too. I was kind of laughing because my son is a senior, and I think the reality that we're winding down is settling upon all of us, but I think for him in particular, I notice that he'll get home and I'll be working and I'm in the middle of a story, so my mind is thinking about something. I'm very intent on it, and then he just comes in and he just kind of lurks. He doesn't interrupt because he knows he's not supposed to vocally always just jump right in and talk, but he's kind of waiting and he just wants to hang out and spend time with me, tell me about his day, and then he'll say, well, one of these days I'm not going to be able to do this, Mom. And I'm like, oh, to your point though, we never really do know that, right? Whether it's our family or the people we get to work with, how do we just be present and really take advantage of the opportunity that we've been given to be with those people? And because the work never quits, does it?
No, the checklist is never going to be, it never finishes. So as you know, our children are very good at doing that. And I think being mindful of it, making sure that we're taking that step back to be able to re-engage and remind, at least for me, remind myself of the importance of what's happening, that this isn't just a transaction. This is a person that I get the opportunity to come alongside.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I love that you went from one of the largest cities in the world to just a very small town in the middle of nowhere. Met with all due respect, as I live in one myself. How did that transition, shape your perspective on the importance of what community is for international workers that may be joining your team and moving to this tiny town in the middle of nowhere?
So actually, my roots are in two different continents, in two different places. I was actually born in London, Ohio, just up the road from where I am, which kind of catches people off guard. The funny thing is, as we've noted, I am an import. My mom was expecting when she came here. My dad came back to go to Ohio State. And so I have constantly been in a position of move and change and transition. So we were in Ohio for a number of years, and we moved to DC when my father got a job with the USDA and the Foreign Service. And then from there, it was Mexico City and Brazil. And so one of the interesting things that happened and that taught me was I tend to have a hard time answering the question, where are you from? Because I feel very connected, obviously, to the United States. I am half American, obviously to Spain, but also to Mexico and to Brazil. And I think that experience of constantly having to define what that is has taught me how to come alongside folks who are from those areas very easily, but also from with people who aren't from here or who aren't from a country that I'm familiar with. Because I think when you experience other countries in such an immersive way, when you're going, building friendships with folks who aren't like you, when you're learning a new language, it teaches you certain traits that help shape you and that help give you the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. The funny thing is that back in high school, when I came back to the States, I was voted the person most likely to end up in the UN. And so you might look at me in Washington Courthouse and think, okay, honey, the United Nations is not in Washington Courthouse, Ohio. And you're absolutely correct. However, I am still a bridge builder of sorts. I am still connecting different cultures and helping understanding grow between different communities and kind of bringing that other side. So whether I have a J1 from Uganda or I have, my TNs or local recruits, I have an ability to put on the right glasses to be able to step back and see what this probably looks like to somebody who has never seen it before. And so I think that upbringing has helped me to come alongside folks from different backgrounds and connect them, which is why I consistently tend to find myself in the middle of everything, for good or bad.
Well, you know, when I visit with people, there are a lot of people who work in the pork industry who are, um, speak multiple languages. You are fluent in both Spanish and Portuguese. Um, how do you think being able to speak the language of your team members really changes the dynamic of trust and also helps you recruit new people to your team?
Goodness. So language is something that removes barriers. I think being able to speak with somebody in the same language also brings dignity to the person that you're talking with. When I can explain something in a native language, I think you can visibly watch a person that may be in a moment of high stress or vulnerability. You can watch their shoulders relax. You can watch the honesty surface. In talking about this meeting with this manager that I impromptu meeting that I had in a barn just this last week, watching him change and just being able to reach across. And I know touch is something that is very different for the American persona, but in the Hispanic culture, it's important. So being able to just lay your hand on the arm and say, hey, not only do I hear you, I see you. And so I think there's that element of cultural competency that comes with language that I'm able to kind of make some space for. There are certain things in certain cultures that don't work, right? So just like with direct eye contact, we Americans, we want to have direct eye contact. If you're not looking at me, you're either not engaged, you're shifty, or something is going on, right? Well, in some cultures, it's actually disrespectful. So having that understanding and being able to take that step back and go, okay, maybe this isn't what they're intending. Maybe, this is a culture that I'm not familiar with, but let's extend some grace and let's see how this thing kind of plays out. Another thing, if you've ever gone to a Latino or a Hispanic gathering, us Americans kind of just show up, and then when we want to leave, we quietly exit, right? Uh, Hispanics are not that way. They will go and hug and kiss every single person as they're walking out. And so if I put on my American hat and just walk out of the room, I'm going to be probably offensive to somebody because I did not take the time to honor them and say, hey, I'm leaving. So these are the kind of the nuances that matter. So it's not just about being able to translate. It's about also understanding the cultural context that comes with it and being able to bridge that gap. Because I think that language does open the door, but I think it's that cultural understanding, inviting them to come in and sit down and stay. And so I think those two links are honestly what helps build that trust, add that accessibility, and also makes me more transparent and just enables them to be able to come and speak to me.
We will be right back after this message from our sponsor.
At United Animal Health, we all share a love for animals. We have devoted our lives to agriculture and to the well-being and productivity of animals. With our guiding principle to always have the best answer, we listen to the animal and let the animal tell us what works and what doesn't. We know that if the animal is healthy and productive, so is the producer, the consumer, and our communities. Learn more at unitedanh.com.
I like to reach out to members of your team or people who know you well to learn a little bit more about you because, I've been able to see you speak on stage and you're phenomenal and we've had side conversations, but I'm like, okay, I want to really know what makes you tick. So I asked Fine Swine employee Shayo Salgado Ortega what it's like to work with you. And here's what she said. She always thinks about everyone around her. Her willingness to help is impressive. She tries to be fair in her decisions. She always has time to listen, and she's very organized. With her, you'll always be laughing. There's always something to talk about. She's very cultured. She's always quoting books, and she's a devout believer, which I also share. Melanie has taught me how to communicate effectively with people, how to be empathetic with colleagues, and also how to understand that it's okay to admit when we're wrong. She'll always say, it's okay. Don't worry. We'll work it out. So that What a wonderful thing to have one of your team say about you. Two things stand out to me in this very impressive list. She talks about empathy and creating space for people to admit when they make mistakes, like we all do. And I tell you what, that is not a common attitude in a lot of work environments. I think it's so important, and I think fear of failure can be so stifling for people. But anyway, I'd like to hear from you. Why do you think empathy and creating space for people to admit when they make mistakes is so important, especially in a pig barn?
Oh my goodness. So, we've talked about my upbringing. Empathy to me is crucial to be able to do this job. I don't know how many meetings I have, and you have the pre-meeting, right? The meeting before the meeting where you kind of go through what you think is going to happen, what you think you're going to hear, what strategies, what can we do, and you kind of get ahead of things. And I don't know how many times I've sat, and even with all the filter of information I've had, I set all that stuff aside and I just listen and I watch the body language and I hear the words and what that feeling is behind the words. And I try to put myself in their shoes. So empathy is having that ability, right, to put your views, the glasses that you wear in your perspective and set it aside and think, what is it like to be in so-and-so's shoes, to have the situation play out and what they saw. And so while it may not change the ultimate decision, somebody feeling heard and connected with, I think is instrumental to what we do. I think if it not having that, there would be a breakdown in trust. There would be no foundation, and I think that's where you see a lot of fractions and stuff develop in work environments.
Yeah. Well, I also talked to Ian Harris, who you mentioned earlier, your colleague at Fine Swine, and he had this to say about you. Let's listen.
She can put her owner's hat on and simultaneously wear a people care hat. And so I think that's really one of her strengths, is that even though her focus is on making sure that our people are cared for, our assimilation is successful for them, she can also put on her owner's hat and hold that line. Melanie is actually a trained coach in the DISC program. And if you know anything about, the 4 different personality types, if you like, she actually has the ability to switch from a high I to a deep C mid-sentence. And so it's a unique skill that she has, and she does it naturally. That's probably actually a good word, is she's an absolute natural born people care leader.
I love it. I feel like that could be a movie title.
Mercy.
So let's talk about DISC, because I know about DISC. You and I talked a little bit about it the other day, but give us a little overview of what DISC is. And why did you feel like it was important enough to be a trained coach in this area to bring that to your team?
Absolutely. So this is one of the tools that we use here. And basically, it is not a personality test. It's kind of an assessment of what the behavior it is that we present. So basically, you have these 4 different categories, and you're not specifically in one box, if that makes any sense. Basically, you're usually a combination of 2, sometimes 3. However, these break down in such a way that it helps somebody who's coming alongside a team member be able to identify communication styles, be able to identify whether somebody is reserved or gregarious, outgoing, to be able to see where the opportunities for conflict are. Because let's face it, you ask anybody in the pig industry, what's easier, working with pigs or working with people? 100% of the time, they're going to say working with people, right? And so understanding the different dynamics that people bring to the table, understanding their why, understanding what motivates them, which are all kind of things that DISC and the values portion helps answer, kind of give you those triggers to be able to understand why they may be set off in certain situations, or understand what they need from me when they come. So an example, as Ian pointed out very eloquently. I swear the British accent makes them sound smart in any given scenario. But I am a high I, which means I get very excited. I am slightly impulsive. I am very interactive. I like to influence situations and be a part of things. However, I am also a very high C, which means I can also put on my C hat, take a step back, be more cautious, be more analytical, not want to move on a decision before I have all of the facts, which as a people care director, you kind of want, right? You don't want somebody who's going to hear one version of the story and react. You need to also be able to go, okay, so this happened between these two people. I've heard this person's story. What about this person? Because as is often quoted, you have two versions of the truth, right? So you need to kind of hear both sides to be able to analyze that. So I think where Ian and I work very well together is that he is somebody who is a high D, and he can see where we need to be and how we need to get there. And I'm usually the one holding him back a little bit, going, oh my goodness, hold on. How are we going to get there? What's this going to look like? How are the people going to feel along the way? We need to stop and take a deep breath. And Ian is just sitting there almost tapping his foot, going, okay, Melanie, when are we going to do this? Let's go. We need to do this. And so working alongside somebody who does not have your same personality or behavior style is incredibly important, because you need that balance. Your team needs that balance. I need his vision and his ability to see things so I can steer and figure out how we're going to get there. And so having that understanding, I think, helps build teams that work efficiently. Mm-hmm. And can I add one more thing? Because I did
Absolutely.
not answer. I'm so sorry. It was too important of a point that Chayo made, as far as being able to offer safe spaces where people can make mistakes. Mm-hmm. Hi, I don't know anybody who has ever walked into a job, rocked it 110%, and never made a mistake. We have to, in the pig industry and in our farms, provide those safe spaces to where if they make a mistake, we can take a step back and make it safe for them to be able to do so, protect them, as was one of our pillars, right? But also be transparent and go, hi, look, I messed up as well. A lot of the conversations with Chayo involve that. Me taking a step back going, yeah, I did that too. Let me tell you how that turned out for me. Be vulnerable, be transparent. Nobody's perfect. So we need to make sure that we're creating spaces that are safe for our folks to be able to do and be able to grow. Because 9 times out of 10, they're not going to make that same mistake again.
Right. No, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I didn't want to keep, bugging you about it, but it is something I think about so much when we talk about biosecurity, and you hear about all these, our industry, we have so many audits and steps and procedures and practices. And then we have a blizzard, or then we have a tornado, or then a fire strikes. And it's just like, there's so many unknowns and things that we sometimes can't control. And yes, there are certain things we can control, but there are times when we're human and the breakdowns occur. And I think, to me, that seems very important, that our barns really make sure they create a place where it is safe to be able to say when things go wrong, so then quick action can be taken to figure out how to go forward, and not create a bigger problem down the road.
Absolutely. Especially when you're talking biosecurity. I'd rather have somebody go, oh my gosh, I crossed paths with this person and I found out that this disease is out. I want them to have that trust and to be able to say, because we just might have saved millions of dollars by going, no, just stay home another day. Let's get you some shoes. Let's get you some clothes. Let's make sure that your car's clean, and take those steps. So absolutely.
Yeah, it's very good. Well, I do want to leave a little time for us to talk about some actionable tips, because this is like my favorite thing about listening to you speak, is that you just make it so, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? Let's talk about bringing somebody new to the farm. It's their first day on the job. What can you do to help people feel connected once they arrive?
Oh, good question. So there is a pre-boarding process that happens, at least it's something that we do here. And basically, before my folks ever set foot in the barn, I want to make sure that they're connected with somebody. So there are phone numbers and stuff that is exchanged. I have some managers that just go above and beyond and make sure they're connecting with them the night before. If it's a new TN and they're in our company housing, they're going to the house, they're taking pizza, they're taking a couple of the folks with them. So that way, before the person even sets foot on the farm, they have faces that are recognizable. There's a little bit more of an understanding beyond what we offer in that preliminary training. We want to make sure that they have the things that make them comfortable. Oh my goodness. I remember the first time I showered into a farm, coming from a school setting. My background was not biosecurity. And so I remember the lady at the time saying, "You need to take a shower." And me literally going, "Okay, do I smell okay? I took a shower this morning. Oh my goodness, did I put deodorant on?" And so it kind of enables that conversation of the importance of biosecurity, of the stuff that we can pick up on the way. Yeah, you might have stopped at Walmart. You might have picked up something before you came in. And so if you have these conversations before they even walk through the door, they're going to be more comfortable. If you're providing, let's be honest, the underwear, the stuff that's, that I don't really want to wear something that somebody else is wearing, and this is already an uncomfortable experience, and how am I going to do this? And navigating all those feelings beforehand, you kind of set them up for success. Once they've showered into the farm, it is crucial that those in leadership are, and I understand the challenge, because you hit the barn and you want to get in, and because there are pigs to be seen, there's stuff that's been happening, you got to get eyes on everything. But it is so important that that team member is at least presented to the team, and at least introduce, "Hey, look, we have Juan Carlos here with us today. This is his first day. He comes to us he has this experience, or he has no experience. So help me welcome him, and let's help him." After that process, we basically walk people through the farm, not with the idea that they're going to have a map of the entire farm and know how to function, but just kind of the general layout. Look, this is farrowing, this is breeding. Right now our pigs are farrowing in these rooms, and this is what it looks like, and walk them through, especially if it's somebody who hasn't had that experience before, walk them through with them the blood, the things that are a little bit more uncomfortable, right? The things that we see on a day-to-day basis, piglets that have been laid on throughout the night, help provide that emotional support, and acknowledge it. Say that, I know this is uncomfortable. I know this is hard. And I can't tell you that you ever really get over it, but you start to understand it. And so having that mindset when we mentor, when we show somebody where they're going, is crucial. Lunchtime, incredibly important. Do not leave your new person sitting off to the side wondering what's going on. Invite them in. Lunchtime is, for me, the most important time of the day. That's where I can see how the team really is. What's going on? Who's sitting off by themselves? Who's not engaging? Who looks tired? And yes, we all look tired pretty much on a day-to-day basis, but who's looking really tired? How many hours are we working? What's going on here? And so making sure that new person is engaged and connected. So by the time they go to shower out at the end of the day, they feel a part of, they're already in community with, connected to, and able to walk out going, "Okay, this job is not easy, but I think I can do it."
Yeah. And a lot of those things you just mentioned don't even cost any money. They just cost attention and focus, and a little bit of intentionality, I guess. And so excellent advice there. You are a mom, and you also are juggling all of the activities of your children. How do you manage to stay present in your job, but also be present with your kids? Any advice for people who are struggling to just feel present? What is something that we can do to make that a little bit easier?
So I have struggled with this one. It's kind of funny that you would ask me this, because this is something that I have had to actually go back and work through. When I started this job here, I am an all-in kind of a personality, as we talked about with I get very impulsive. When I'm here, I'm fully present. I don't want to think about anything else because I'm committed. You have my undivided attention. I have a hard time like turning off the switch and going to transitioning to the family portion, the part where I get to be the assistant chief's wife and the mother to 4 amazing kids. who are not perfect, but who are absolutely the light, some of the lights of my life. And so I have had to go back and implement some of that term we like to call that work-life balance, which I have had to really sit and digest and make sure that I'm actually living it out, because I want my life not to be something that I'm just speaking. I want it to be something that I'm living. And so I want my team members, oh my gosh, if I struggle to do it, how much more will they? And so I want to make sure that the moms that work for us, that the fathers that work for us, they come in, they give their all, they do their job, but they go home, and that they are able to engage, be present for their kids, and show up for them. You know, I can't do this job if my marriage is not strong. I can't do this job if stuff is going on with my kids and if I'm shoving them aside. I won't be engaged in here. And so for me to be able to do that, I've had to implement some boundaries that are a little bit hard, because as much as I have to be accessible and I want to be accessible for our people 24/7, I can't do that. I'm human. And I have to make sure that, you know, at the basketball game, I'm there. I'm watching, I'm cheering, probably getting a little loud because I am Spanish and I am a little competitive. And I want to be there, not checking my phone, not seeing what's going on, not answering the text messages. So making sure that we're carving out those times to be present at home, I think is incredibly important. You know, we spend a third of our work life, a third of our life at work. And so we don't need to spend, we need to make sure that the other 2/3 are actually building the things that matter outside of the things that we work for inside our given businesses.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to your point of when you have, and I don't like to use that work-life balance term either, but when you have that, right, when you, maybe I should say, when you have your priorities in order,
Correct.
then that does really trickle into your job and gives you that clarity to be able to do your job every day, and then return back to, you know, your family and your life there with a better, I think just a better sense of purpose and focus. And when that gets out of order, which certainly it does, I mean, for me it certainly does at times, I feel like nothing. I like you can't win at anything. And so it does. I just think it means so much to have healthy, functioning employees who've been able to find that balance, but in a place where they're encouraged to go figure that out and to put their people first too.
And we have to remember, we don't get that time back. You know, I'm now standing at, you know, my oldest is about to turn 25. I have one about to graduate college. I have a junior in high school, and I have one still in middle school. And I can look back and think, oh my goodness, there have been so many times where I have been so career focused, or so, you know, my priorities haven't been what they should have, that I wasn't as engaged as what I should have been. And I refuse to make that mistake again. I do.
Yeah, so true. So true. We were just talking about sometimes it's like, what are we chasing, you know, at your job? And obviously, you know, some of it, I think, you know, I'm wired in a way that I want to be successful, but I can try to win an award or try to get an accolade or try to get a well done, and it just fades so fast. But those memories with my family and my kids and the people whom I love, those don't, those last. Those are the things that I remember. I cannot even remember, you know, any of the awards or any of the honors that I thought were so important for me to try to achieve. But I can remember like his face when he saw me at his meet, or I can remember screaming my head off at the cross country state meet. You know, like those are the things that I love. So but we have to have jobs, you know, and I love my job. So just trying to figure that out is so important. And I love your honesty and your transparency that, like, yeah, you don't get it right either, even though I do consider you an expert at doing this. So
I don't know about that, but it's I keep trying.
hey, that's all we can do. Okay, so to close things up here, I just want to ask, is there one message that you might want to share with the pork industry? What would it be and why? Like, if you could just give them one piece of advice right now, what would it be?
Oh, what would my message be? I think my message would be to establish trust, to work on trust, and regardless of how challenging it may be, maintain that trust. Because if you aren't showing it if we aren't showing it, hey, this isn't just you, this isn't me. If I am not keeping my word, if I'm not explaining my decisions, if I'm not showing up when something goes wrong or admitting when I miss it, then I am slowly eroding that bank of trust that I have with my people. And so my understanding of trust is that it is incredibly slow to build and it is very quickly to lose. And so I have to make sure that I am not looking at my people as dollars and cents, as a line item, that I keep a very real, very tangible perspective of that trust that I have with them, and making sure that at the end of the day, that is kept.
Mhm. Oh, so good. Melanie, thank you so much for sharing your heart today. What a powerful reminder to all of us that our industry's greatest asset is always going to be the people who are working inside of our barns. I hope all of our listeners feel inspired to bring a little more presence and purpose to their own teams this week, and look forward to seeing your continued impact, not only at Fine Swine, but in our industry as a whole. And again, I just want to thank all of you guys for tuning in today. You can dive into more of the Pork Podcast on Farm Journal's YouTube channel or listen to it anywhere podcasts are found. I'm Jennifer Scheich, finding the story behind the story.